welcome to another episode of Rose-Colored Reviews. I am your lovely host, Travis Goss. This is the show where I take a look at classic video games, television shows, and movies, and through rose-colored lenses, I see if they still stand the test of time. Now we're going to go back to 1988 for this episode, and we're going to take a look at a science fiction sitcom that comes from one of the greatest countries in the world, England. And of course I'm talking about Red Dwarf, which is one of the coolest science fiction comedy shows of all time.
Is that a cigarette you're smoking, mister?
No, it's a chicken.
Right, you're on report.
This is a show that spawned 10 series altogether, and also has a magazine subscription that was around, had some novels, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were some board games or video games that were made to coincide with the series. Now, let's get a little bit of a backstory about the whole show. In the very first episode of the entire universe, that is Red Dwarf, we have two characters who are always butting heads. We have the slob who is always eating curry, and his name is David Lister, who is played by Craig Charles. And we have the other character who is always thinking he's better than everybody else on the ship, and prides himself on it. He's very smug. Of course, I'm talking about Arnold Rimmer, who is played by Chris Berry. Now, these two are vending machine technicians who are always at each other's throats. And Rimmer is Lister's superior, and he's always writing Lister up for something. In fact, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if the book was about that big of complaints. But they're always at each other's throats in some way. Now, what happens in the first episode, we find out that Lister smuggled a cat on board the Jupiter mining ship known as Red Dwarf. And when the captain finds out about this, he demands Lister to turn over the cat. The only problem here is the cat's actually pregnant. The cat could very well have some sort of disease or anything that could jeopardize the whole crew on the Red Dwarf ship. So the captain gives him a choice. Either hand over the cat so it can be dissected, or Lister can spend the next 18 months in suspended animation, or stasis. So, naturally, of course, and I don't blame him, I wouldn't want to have the cat killed for any reason. He decided to go ahead and put himself in stasis. While he was in stasis, there was a radiation leak that killed everybody on the ship. And instead of actually being in stasis for 18 months, Holly, who is the ship's computer, keeps him in stasis for 3 million years. You guys want to know who Holly is? Well, he is actually the ship's computer, as I mentioned before, and he has an IQ of 6,000.
Shouldn't this plug into something?
Oh yeah, that joins up with the white cable.
A white cable?
Yep. Or is it the yellow cable? Yes, I think it should have been yellow.
Okay, well, every computer has a bug or two, so, nothing's perfect. But when Lister comes out of stasis, he doesn't realize it's been 3 million years until Holly tells him. And of course, he kind of starts piecing everything together when he sees all the crew members are all over the ship in these piles of white powder. And because of this, there's nobody on the ship. He's the last man alive. But he does kind of celebrate the fact that Rimmer is no longer around. But he's also kind of heartbroken too, because he wanted to be with his girl that he wanted to be with the entire time he was on the ship. And of course I'm talking about Christine Kochanski, who previously told Lister about how the captain wanted to see him in his office about the cat. But anyways. So while Lister is pretty excited that he doesn't have to deal with Rimmer anymore, Holly throws a bit of a curveball towards his way. You see, what goes on in the future is if any officer dies on duty, he actually comes back as a hologram. So if you can put 2 and 2 together, yeah, Rimmer comes back, only as a hologram. And why does that happen? Because Holly does not want to see Lister go crazy, all because he is alone on the ship with no one to talk to. And while Lister protests Rimmer being his well, companion, as it were, he actually talks to Holly about. It's like, why couldn't Holly bring back Chansky instead of Rimmer? Come to find out that Lister has had more conversations with Rimmer than any other person on the ship, and Holly seemed fit to bring Rimmer back as his companion, even though those two duke it out all the time. I kind of think of that Lister and Rimmer are the futuristic versions of the Odd Couple. You got the slob, and you got the compulsive neat freak who thinks who is better than everybody else. And then later on in that very episode, we come across another life being who was on the ship. Remember I told you about that cat earlier? Well, since it's been 3 million years, the cat has evolved. It started out with a little animal right here. It's like furry, cute little cat. Actually, as it evolved, it turned into a form of a human race. And instead of actually telling you what cat is like, the one that's been evolved, here he is right here.
How am I looking?
Awesome fashion sense. Very nice fashion sense. But to round out the ensemble cast, while we have Holly, Lister, Rimmer, and Cat, there's another character who actually became quite popular during right when the third series started, and his name is Crichton, who was actually a robot servant, I guess you can call it. It's an android, I suppose. But the first time we actually see Crichton is in episode 1 of series 2, and he was played by different actors, played by David Ross. And when series 3 came out and Crichton was actually brought back as a regular character, he was played by Robert Llewellyn.
Crichton, remember yesterday's class? An introduction to insults?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Now, how do we describe the gentleman who's just been on the screen?
He's Mr.
No, come on. He's a
smee.
Nearly, come on, nearly.
He's a smee.
He's a
smee. He's a smig. Hey.
The first time I actually came across Red Dwarf was like around 1997, I do believe. I was flipping through the stations on Saturday night, landed on PBS, and when the Red Green show went off for the night, the next show up was Red Dwarf. And I'm not a big sci-fi freak. You know, I do love Star Wars. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, but I'm not really that big into science fiction. But when Red Dwarf came on the air in the States, and actually became a late bloomer when finally I had a chance to watch it, I was blown away. It was very well written. It's extremely funny. It's actually one of the greatest, actually one of the greatest science fiction shows I've ever seen, alongside Doctor Who, and that says quite a bit. Now, the original run of the series went on until 1999. The show started in 1988, and it ran until 1993 originally. Then it took a couple years off for hiatus because the cast members wanted to go do something else. The show actually came back in 1996, I do believe, and then went on until 1999, I do believe. 98 or 99. Afterwards, there was rumors of a movie that was in production. There's still talks about it to this very day. I'd quite like to see a Red Dwarf movie, and maybe it could come out someday, who knows. But there was a revival for Red Dwarf in 2009. See, what happened previously in 2008, actually it could have been a couple years before that, there is an English channel called Dave, I think it's Dave TV, or it's just Dave. And it was named after David Lister. When the channel launched, it aired every single episode of Red Dwarf. And then in 2009, during Easter weekend, they had a Red Dwarf revival show. Actually, it's more like a mini-series, a 3-part mini-series called Back to Earth, in which, for some reason, the entire crew found out that the whole time they actually were living in a TV show. They're actually television characters, which is sort of like breaking the fourth wall almost. And then they go down to Earth and they see all this stuff. It was like DVDs and magazines, everything. It was just everything I told you about. They actually saw for themselves, and they couldn't believe that what they were living as fictional characters. It was January of 2012 when the show was brought back on. It's on Dave still, but it's a brand new series of Red Dwarf. So there you go. Yeah, 10 series of a really awesome show. And I highly recommend it. If you love science fiction, if you love comedy, if you like zany characters, this is definitely the perfect show to check out. And I would love to actually have the DVD series someday, but you know, that's cool. I got Netflix, and that's awesome right then and there. I can watch it anytime I like. So, that's what I think about Red Dwarf. Before we end this show, just to get you a couple things to know. First of all, I launched a brand new Facebook page. It's www.facebook.com/rosecoloredreviews. And also, which is pretty cool, I've renamed the channel that you're watching this on. So it's now youtube.com/rosecoloredreviews. And if you guys want to get a hold of me, get a hold of me at travis.goss@makeuphowersradio.com. That is my email address, as you can tell. And you can find me on Twitter on travisgoss79. And I'm on Facebook. It's just travis.goss.3. I still need to get that fixed somehow. And a couple other things to let you guys know. I have a couple of shows that I do online. One airs on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern and 7 p.m. Central. It is on MegaPowersRadio.com, and it's Geek Speak Live. I am the co-host, and we talk about anything that's relevant in the week, which is kind of like the show. We're talking about video games, television shows, movies, things we've seen in that week or the week before, and every episode is dedicated to some Hollywood actor. And last week's episode, we talked about Nicolas Cage, who is like a total badass actor. He's and like in 2011, he had like 5 movies out. Wow. Yeah, that guy loves to work. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else to tell you guys about in terms of how you can contact me. Oh yeah, and the other show I work on is on Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, also on MegaPowersRadio.com, and that is I Got Gameplay. And this is strictly a video game show where we share news, and each episode is dedicated to a topic. And go check it out. It is on MegaPowersRadio.com, and would love to hear you guys' comments and response to that one, to each of those shows. And also for this particular episode, or any episodes of Rose Colored Reviews on YouTube, I would appreciate it if you would like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me out, and it helps you out too, because it keeps you in the loop as to when new episodes are posted. And speaking of episodes, I just realized something when I was talking to you guys about Red Dwarf. I recall that in 1992, there was a Red Dwarf, there's a version of Red Dwarf that was supposed to come out in the United States. And they filmed a pilot. And I just, I found out about that earlier when I was doing this little bit of research on the show. Let me take a look at it. Let me bring it up here. On here. Let's find out. Let's see what we got. Could be good. Alright. And see, youtube.com. Red Dwarf USA. Yep. Here we go. And play.
Weekly chicken soup machine.
All right, Mr. Yes, sir, Mr. Privet, sir.
Smack in hell!